Okay, welcome everyone. I'd like to direct your attention to the stage. Let me welcome opinion editor from the Sarasota Herald Tribune, Tom Tryon.
Thank you, Susan. Hello, everybody. I'll just quickly mention that Tom Danson set the bar for all of us pretty high with his invocation. And I just wanted to make the record clear that despite what he would like us to think, he was not there when the original documents were signed when the country was formed. So anyway, okay, I guess I get to call up the candidates. So let's start with, let me do this. As you know, 2 county commission seats are up for grabs, Districts 2 and 4. Today's group is running in District 2. The Republican primary culminates August 26. Absentee ballots go out July 22. There will be a general election. Alexandra Coe is running with no party affiliation. There are 2 write-ins, and they will face the winner of the Republican primary between Paul Caragiolo and Shannon Snyder, who coincidentally or not so coincidentally are currently on the city commission. Boom. All right. So, can somebody help me out here? Who's here? Paul Caragiolo, please come to the stage. Alexandra Coe. Alexandra. Steve McAllister. Shannon Snyder. And Pete Thiessen. All right. While they're coming up, I hope everybody's here. We'll open the panel up, with what I call the lightning round, some quick questions that deserve the shortest possible answers. I'll then ask each candidate a few other questions germane to the election. We'll pose some specific questions depending on the circumstances of the election. After the Q&A, each candidate gets a 1-minute closing. Got that, candidates? 1-minute closing. And we'll take questions from members starting at or before 1 p.m., and the intent is to finish by 1:15. I've got a streak intact. We have finished on time every time I've done this. So, are we ready? Personal devices put away. I'm just kidding. All right, here we go. We'll just go down the line. My first job, your first job was? First job, Paul.
A punching bag for my older brothers, I guess.
Yep, all right. Alex?
I was other than babysitting, my first official job was I was the youngest Avon lady. I was 15 years old and I had my own Avon route.
Nice. Steve? First job.
I mowed lawns at Orange Acres Mobile Home Park out on Clark and 75.
All right. Shannon?
Mowed grass when I was 12 years old, and my first official job was actually pouring concrete for my father's construction company.
Nice. Pete?
I was an agricultural worker.
All right, thanks. All right. Argentina or Germany? Argentina or Germany?
I'm not answering any yes or no questions, so I'll give it a shot at this one. USA. No, I'm going to say Argentina.
All right. Alex?
I'll say Argentina too.
Steve?
Well, I'm part German, but I like the Argentinian flair, so I'll go with Argentina.
All right. Shannon?
Germany.
Germany? Pete?
I don't follow sports unless I personally know one of the players.
All right. All right.
Like that.
Some of you are wondering why we had Pete here today.
Does he play for Argentina or Germany?
Thank you, Pete. All right. We'll just keep going in this direction. Running for county commission is like. Running for county commission is like.
Me?
Yes, Paul.
It's a lot of fun. It's great. Great experience.
All right. Alex, it's like what?
Running for county commissioner is like waking up in the morning to a full body massage and breakfast in bed.
Yeah, sure. All right. Let me remind everybody.
Where are you running? What county?
I'm sorry. I forgot to put you all under oath. Can an officer of the court please come up, please, and let's do this. All right, running for county commission is like what, Steve?
It's like staging a Broadway production with a ukulele and a pair of tap shoes.
Nice. All right. So Shannon, running for county commission is like?
Like a call to the mission field.
Call the mission. All right, and Pete?
I find it a lot like running for city commission,
All right, that's a good answer.
except
All right.
it's bigger.
All right. Now we have a specific question for Paul and Shannon. Starting with Paul, being on the Sarasota City Commission is like?
What was your answer, Steve?
Broadway production.
It's a pleasure to serve.
Shannon, what's it like?
Like herding cats.
All right. Okay. All right, now, Alexandra, and I made a unilateral decision to call everybody by their first name, so I hope that's okay. Alexandra, why are you running with no party affiliation?
Well, I decided to run no party affiliation, even though I've been the co-chair of the Libertarian Party in Sarasota for the last 2 years, because I believe that it's time to take politics out of local government and to start elect people on their virtue and not on their political affiliation.
Okay, thank you. Steve, why are you running as a write-in?
Originally, I wanted to do no party affiliation because, for a similar reason as my neighbor here, because I think that we need to take parties out of it. This is serious business, and I don't think we need allegiance to that. As far as the write-in thing, it fit my budget a little bit more. And also, I think that we need to have a more participatory democracy. And so I'm calling people to go a little further than just writing in a check. If you believe in what I say, what I stand for, with the very unique point of view that I can bring to our county commission, then I want you to work a little harder for it and actually write that in and be conscious of what you're doing. So I'm calling for a higher stage of consciousness, basically.
All right, Pete, why'd you run as a write-in?
I've been a Republican for 45 years. I am still a Republican. However, the ballot position is for sale for cash, or in another way, it's for sale for cash. If you can hire enough canvassers to gather 3,000 signatures, or if you happen to know some that'll work for free, then you can get on with well, actually, it's a petition, and it has 7 bits of information that you have to explain why you need that. So I didn't get 3,000.
All right. Both for Steve and Pete, did any persons, or organizations urge you to run as a write-in in order to close the primary to Republicans? Just yes or no?
No.
Pete, yes or no, please?
No.
All right, thank you. Paul and Shannon, you're running in the GOP primary. What Republican principles would guide your decisions in office? We'll start with Shannon now.
Low taxes. I've never voted to raise the millage rate, and I've never voted to raise the business fees while I was sitting as a city commissioner.
All right, thank you. Paul?
I also believe in limited taxes, and I have a focus on small business simply because I believe that the story about business in this community is the story of business most places, and that's the story of small business. And as a small business person, I would endeavor to look for ways to help the small business owners through the system.
All right, thank you. So, Paul, you decided early in the process to leave the city commission and run for county commission. Why did you make that decision?
I enjoy serving, and the opportunity came about to represent the folks of the entire county, and I was very interested in the opportunity.
Okay, thanks. Shannon, you decided to run relatively late in the process against a fellow city commissioner. Why'd you make that decision?
I made that decision when I saw the ethics officer being basically drug out of the building and fired, and I realized that there's somebody who needed to stand up and start having some real discussions about what's going on.
All right, thank you. So speaking as city commissioners, Paul and Shannon, and I'll ask Paul first, do you think the Sarasota 2050 plan is good or bad for cities and urban areas?
I think it can be good. I think it can be worked in a way to integrate it with municipalities' own urban plans. I don't think it's functioning as desired the way it stands right now, and you don't have to take my word for it. You could ask the father of new urbanism himself. He will tell you that it's actually contributing to urban sprawl, suburban sprawl, excuse me. And I think that part of the issue is really looking at, with the 4 municipalities, how the plans are going to coincide with the county's growth plan. They're all interconnected. Looking at things regionally is going to make more sense.
All right, Paul? I'm sorry, Shannon, same question, please.
Yeah, it's going to be open sprawl, and basically it's going to cost the city slow and steady money as far as coming up with the services to basically provide. The city of Sarasota has grown by 3,000 residents in the last 30 years, and I think if anybody looks at the traffic downtown, that growth in traffic is not from the city of Sarasota's growth, it's come from the region. And as we have more and more uncontrolled growth, the cities are going to pay the price for it, and they'll pay for the price of it in their tax base.
All right, thanks. We'll start with Shannon and then to Paul. As I mentioned, as everybody knows, you're city commissioner, but would you take a different approach to 2050 if you're elected to the county commission than what you've articulated as a city commissioner?
No.
No? Okay. Paul?
No, I don't think you have to. I think that's all part of looking at things in a regional capacity, is that they're not mutually exclusive. They don't have to compete with each other. We're getting to the point where it's hard to sort of figure out very easily where the city begins and where the city ends. I think you'll find out that there are lots of folks in the community who are actually not aware of whether they live in the city or not. So that would tell you that there are some pretty blurred lines. And I think that looking at things holistically is the way to operate.
All right, thank you. All right, this is for everybody. Kind of a two-part question. What additional steps, if any, should county government take in response to homelessness? Would you specifically address whether you support or oppose a come-as-you-are shelter? All right, so what do you think? What steps, if any, should county government take in response to homelessness? What additional steps? And specifically address whether you support or oppose a come-as-you-are shelter. We'll start with Alexandra.
I do not oppose a come-as-you-are shelter necessarily, but I oppose spending a lot of money on it. I think that there's facilities that we already have that can be used for that. The homeless issue is something that we definitely need to address. It's not just a city issue, it's all across the county. As an anthropologist, I understand homelessness is a multidimensional problem that requires multidimensional solutions. And I think we need to open up the dialogue, because we are not talking about what the real issues are with homelessness currently.
All right, thank you. Steve.
I think we need to look at things from a more resource-based economics point of view. I think that the human species is quite complex. We are, by our own definition, a melting pot society. And each of us has different requirements for what gives us a life of well-being, of what gives us the ability to build the life that we want. I think that a come-as-you-are shelter is good, is necessary. We should have that kind of catch-all for anyone who falls by the wayside. Nevertheless, we also have resources at our disposal, such as the zombie homes that were talked about in the paper this week, such as the cattle property that people have talked about before, for setting up alternative kinds of housing to get people into situations that work best for them. When we're looking at post-traumatic stress disorder veterans, they don't want to be put in an institution. They don't even want to be in a house. Maybe they like to be in a tent. Let's find out what these people need and how to put them in environments where they're going to prosper and flourish. And I think that the government should be basically a way to open up those flows, open up those channels for people to live their highest lives on their terms.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, I think on a county level that we need to start looking at whether we have enough drug and mental health facilities as a diversion program, not just opening more facilities for the state to inundate us. I've spoken about this at length at the commission table. We need to start worrying about whether we have those facilities available for diversion from our court system so they can actually get stabilized and actually get turned back around and become productive life. As far as the come-as-you-are shelter, St. Pete runs a very good facility. I am having second thoughts about having it just open to anybody that wants to come in and drop off because they're walking through town and need a place. I do think that this facility such as that for law enforcement that are dealing with our quality of life issues to try to do a jail diversion program is completely appropriate. And I think Pinellas County runs a good program, but I think we need to start worrying about our jail diversion program because it's very expensive to add jail space and we cannot arrest our way out of this problem.
All right, thank you. Paul?
Yeah, Without going into it, you pretty much just heard the entire plan, and that the plan that was just outlined is basically what Dr. Marbut has suggested to us. A lot of folks are getting sort of fixated on the actual idea of the Come As You Are shelter. However, when you look at the entire plan, what's interesting and sort of a little dangerous about it is every sort of component to this plan is just as important as the next. And you need to adopt the entire, or change the entire way you do business and stop enabling and start engaging. And we do have a model that's very close to us. It is a jail diversion program. It's precisely how it functions. And we need to get down to the business of actually just doing it. However, it's not, there's no surprise it comes with a tremendous amount of political liabilities. These are things that we have to confront, but we should be moving forward.
All right, thank you. Pete?
There is a really amazing groundswell of private interest and volunteerism in this area. Many, many people of means or people of ability want to help. However, the city is particularly standing in the way of at least one program that I'm familiar with, just plain standing in the way. Won't give them water permit, won't give them sewer permit, won't let them give an electrical permit for over a year. And I mean, this is just, you know, they talk all they want, but until they start actually getting out of the roadblock, I don't think they want to, actually. I really don't. I don't think they want to.
All right, thank you. Let's start, we'll just do a yes or no here. We'll just start with Paul and go down the road. Do you support or oppose the diverging diamond proposal for the I-75 University Parkway interchange?
I'm in support of it.
Alex?
I don't think that it's perfect. I think we need to revisit it, but definitely we have to do something, and that seems like a plausible solution.
All right, Steve?
I'm for exploring the possibilities, but I would need further input on it before I could say yes or no.
All right, thank you. Shannon?
I support it, and I voted for it as an MPO member.
Oh, okay, thank you. Pete, yes or no, please?
They all talked about it. I get yes or no? Okay, I'm going to expand on it a little bit.
A very little bit, please.
All right. Now, I support University Parkway as an experiment. I think they should use it for a few years before they do Fruitville and Clark.
All right, thank you. All right, this is for Shannon, Paul, and Alex. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, that Sarasota County will have to fund improvements to local roads near the proposed interchange. How would you suggest the county do that? Start with Paul, then Alex, then Shannon.
There's no doubt that the money for the infrastructure is getting tight. In fact, I just got out of a meeting from the Minnesota League of Cities where that was discussed precisely. There are some possibilities, whether it's going to the state, perhaps use of penny sales tax. Infrastructure is very, very expensive, but I would say to you that I think that project in particular is important enough that it would take precedent over several other things, perhaps.
All right, Alex?
Well, I think university is an example of where we need to stop and realize that we've made a couple mistakes in how we've moved forward with development. I mean, part of the reason we have development is we want it to pay for itself. We're not looking to increase our taxes, which is what happens. I mean, Paul just said we have to maybe institute a penny tax, and I think that we have to stop that kind of development. We cannot continue to burden taxpayers with infrastructure after the fact with development.
Okay, thank you. Shannon?
The question is how to pay for it. First, we need to find out which are the main priorities and also team up with our partners in Manatee County. All those roads up in there basically are joint connectors, and it's right on the line between Sarasota and Manatee County. It's going to be probably at least 2 decades for us to try to come in there and straighten out most of what the traffic mess is going to be when that thing opens up and as the development occurs. It's going to take 2 decades. And the question is whether we draw from Peter to pay Paul. There's already development in South County. We've been promising River Road and emergency accesses, so we need to start worrying about the development in Sarasota County and not the development in Manatee County as we move forward. I think that would be my priority in the funding side of it. It's going to come from multiple sources, everything from taxes and on road tax, gas tax, 1 cent sales tax, state revenue sharing. It's going to be a whole pot of money that we're going to have to draw from, but it's going to be a very, very slow process, and unfortunately, it's going to be a mess for a lot of years.
All right, same three in reverse order. So that would be Shannon, Alex, and Paul. What, if anything, if you had been a county commissioner when the mall permitting was proceeding, what, if anything, would you have done to ensure the infrastructure was in place before the mall opened? Shannon.
Would require the infrastructure to be in place before it was allowed to move forward. That would have been the first thing. You don't build it and try to solve the problem. You solve the problem before you build it. I mean, the cart was before the horse.
All right, thanks. Alex?
Well, I have to agree with Shannon on that. I mean, I think like Benderson Park and what they've done with Cattleman Road, that looks beautiful. The rowing facility looks beautiful. But then again, we should have addressed the traffic issue before we put them all.
All right. Paul?
Well, hindsight's always 20/20, but due diligence can solve a lot of problems, also create a few other ones. But in a project of that magnitude, you're better proceeding with caution. No doubt about it.
All right, thank you. Shuffle my notes. Two-part question for the same three. Do you support the county commission's vote to sell its share of Warm Mineral Springs back to Northport? So yeah, let's do it that way. Yes, Paul.
I do. I think that at the end of the day, there's clearly a schism between the two boards of what the vision should be for that facility. And although I might subscribe personally to one particular view, I believe that that's best left to the most local government, who is most directly representative of the population and the citizenry. And I think it's actually a good solution, and that the city of Northport should be the one driving this bus. It's going to affect their citizens more than anyone else, and I think it's a fair and equitable resolution, to be honest with you.
All right, thank you. Alex?
Well, I think that Warm Mineral Springs is a really vital resource for the people of Northport, but I do not think that the county should relinquish responsibility. There should be a more cooperative network between county and local city governments, and I think Warm Mineral Springs is a pretty good playground to try to see how we might be able to make that work effectively, because it's a very important issue to the people in Northport.
All right. Shannon?
Yeah, I think first of all, we need to recognize that there was a divergent partnership, and basically one group decided to sell out to the other one, and that makes sense. But I think as a compliment to everybody, whether the city or county, is that we have now protected a natural resource that's one of a kind anywhere else in this country, and we preserve that into the future. Now, who manages it and who's in charge of it, that is a different subject. But we need to take a deep breath as a community and not worry about the diverging problems that we had. And actually, there was a solution, and we solved the first problem, and is in public ownership, so that at least it's preserved for future generations. As far as dividing between the properties, I think the city of Northport will do a fine job as far as managing it. They have a very good city manager down there. It's just a difference in philosophy and how that partnership, and I think it was time to move on, and I think that was an appropriate decision.
Okay, thanks. I think you've all answered the second part of that question, so we'll move on. And this is for the two current office holders, Paul and Shannon. If you had to pick one decision that you have made as a city commissioner that best exemplifies your decision-making processes, your approach to government, what would that decision be? And please elaborate a little bit on that. Paul.
Yeah, and it's something fairly controversial. It was the decision to migrate the IT department over to the city clerk's office. And although it was very contentious at the time, I really believe wholeheartedly in transparency in government. It is a messy situation. It can be. Making of sausage is a messy situation, but it should be fully transparent. And I think that ultimately, even though it can be difficult to operate that way, it is for the better, it is a better relationship you're establishing with the people you represent, and people should have access to information no matter what. And that is something that I'm very, very, very strong on, and I'm very proud of, even though it was not an easy thing to do.
Thank you. Is it tacky if I just make the observation that the guy that owns the Italian restaurant was talking about making sausage? That's
Yes, it is tacky.
You know, I hadn't thought of that, so yeah. But thank you for that.
yeah, thank you. Yeah. All right, Shannon.
It shows you're paying attention and I'm not.
Yeah, that's right.
Your question is what decision?
Yeah,
I'm
if you
most
had to
proud-
pick a decision that best exemplifies your approach to government, what would that be?
I think it comes to the Laurel Park overlay. There was a decision between Laurel Park, the downtown code, and how basically the business community, the neighborhoods were lined up in basically conflict with each other. That came through, basically got ground through several meetings, and at the end of the day, what we came up with was the way the Laurel Park overlay was wanting to cooperate with the downtown master plan, which is administrative review. When it was clear the commission was divided, it was clear the community was divided into two camps, I was able to point out, if we do it this way and we showed the path, we can actually go through a form-based code, which we're currently working on, which is now in the budget, we've hired people for. We may get to administrative review once the form-based code is done to make it easier, so everybody stops the fighting between the neighborhoods and the business community, and everybody's on a level playing field so they know exactly what can be built, what can't be built, and that way it moves forward. I think that's what I'm most proud of, is that basically we walked out of a meeting that was probably going to be a divided commission, and it was a 5-0 vote, and the neighborhood and the business community walked out with basically a win-win.
Good. Thank you. All right, and this one's for Alex, whose name will appear on the general election ballot. You have not served on an elected board before, correct?
No.
Right. So, why do you think people should vote for you in that case? What would you bring to the office?
I have been involved with a lot of things in the county. I have also been extensively involved with issues with the 2050, particularly the issues of the rural people that live out east. I've studied the cattle ranching community for about 8 years now, and so I'm very aware of the importance of balancing urban and rural space. As an anthropologist, my consulting company has taken a big shift into dialogue building. And one of the things that I have discovered during this work is that sometimes the things that we're not talking about are the most important things we should be talking about. And I think that that applies to Sarasota as well. There's a lot of issues that we just keep spinning around with the same conversations that we need to look at differently, and we need to start talking about the things we're not talking about. And when we do that, I think we'll find the solutions.
Okay, thank you. Let me just pause real quickly here. Give me an idea of how many people anticipate asking questions from the floor. Just raise your hand if you think you'd be. Okay, thanks. Just want to make sure we have enough time. You know, this is my first time with reading glasses doing this. Yeah,
It gets worse.
Let's go down the row. We'll start with Paul. What is your view of the county's policies on economic development and its performance in that realm?
I think one of the things that the county commission is to be commended for is the fact that their actions follow their philosophy, which is to welcome investment, which is to look for opportunities to diversify our economic system, which is predominantly based on tourism, seasonal residency, and the service industry. And the fact that there has been such a remarkably successful, and even though it's early, I think we can all agree there's been tremendous success. Sports tourism has been a huge part of that. I don't see how, from a philosophical standpoint, you could fault the county commission for anything with economic development. I think that what perhaps may need to be done is that from an administrative capacity, the follow-through and hitting the punch list to make sure that things are being done to execute the vision that the board agrees on is perhaps where there might need to be some work done. But I think economic development, anyone who's involved in the county government should be proud of the direction it's gone.
Good, thank you. Alex?
Well, I think that we should definitely be looking at ways to support local businesses that are already here instead of continuing to think that there's going to be some knight in shining armor company that's going to come in and rescue us economically. I also think that we're ignoring the potential agriculture has to be an economic engine for Sarasota County. Agriculture is the second largest economic engine for the state of Florida, and we're part of the state of Florida. And I think that we need to revisit the potential that agriculture has. Cattle ranchers have had record profits recently, and it's an important industry. It's a multilateral industry in agriculture. Also looking at local food systems. Local food systems are $1 billion business all across the United States, and many urban spaces are starting to develop local food systems. We should be looking more at that. It's not even something that we're talking about. Our EDC report says we want to have health care as one of our driving economic models. Well, healthcare should start on the front end, not on the back end. We ought to be doing things to provide health for our seniors on the front end through a local food system, through looking at ways to live that support well-being and not just looking at to address people in hospitals. So I think there's a number of economic things we can do.
Thank you. Steve?
I think that globally we are at a time of great shift. We are all kind of seeing a lot of changes happening in the world at a very quick pace. And I think in Sarasota we have gotten into a pattern of looking at building, tourism, real estate as like our key industries, and we just keep looking at those over and over and over again, and they're fine and all well. But I think we do need to have a lot of economic potential outside the box of just finance that we can address, such as food, such as agriculture. These are huge economic factors that we need to invest more in. If we have plenty of food, it's not really such a grasping exercise to try to find the money to pay for it if we're growing it here by ourselves. I think our arts, as far as nonprofit arts, is a huge economic indicator. It's very, very, very strong economically, but I don't think we've come near to tapping into its full potential, not only for nonprofit arts, but in for-profit arts. We have the potential now to look at cognitive surplus and how we can create new things to be able to spread out through the internet and through the web, and touching on all these different technologies that I don't think we've become fully aware of, because we're kind of set in patterns. And I think if we can expand outside of those regular patterns into the new opportunities that await us, I think we have a really just a great future ahead of us.
All right, thank you. Shannon?
Yeah, I think we need to stop grabbing onto whatever the trend of the month is and offering incentives to specific corporations. I think we need to come up with a blanket policy and expand our abating our industrial base by abating our tangible taxes and trying to basically expand our inventory base. When you start looking at the amount of light industrial properties that are around the county, it is a massive amount of property. And we also have the Port of Manatee opening up, and the Port of Tampa will be repositioning itself with a new cruise line out on the Pinellas County side of things. There's going to be a lot more pore space and a lot more opportunity for this area to get into the manufacturing side of things. And I think that's probably where we need to be aiming our directions at.
All right, thanks. Pete?
It's getting to the point where businesses are formulating business plans with the assumption that they're going to get some government money to help them out. I think that when the government starts investing, quote unquote, in private business, it distorts the market. Things that would not be undertaken at all of a sudden look like, hey, that's a good idea. Then they get some money from the government, the bonuses go to the CEOs and the next in line maybe, and then it's business as usual. It really doesn't have any impact, certainly no benefit to the taxpayer. So when you talk about economic development, you need to make sure that it's not turning into welfare for the rich.
All right, thank you. All right, since the primary comes first, after this question, we'll do the closing statements. Since the primary comes first, I'll ask Paul and then Shannon how you want Republican voters to differentiate between the two of you. Paul.
I'd want any voter to look at perhaps not what I say at a forum, not what you see in the newspaper, but look at the votes that I have cast. I have been a responsible steward with the budget, I believe. I have been someone who, to my knowledge, has been on I believe, the correct side of any economic development issue. I am here with my young family. I have a long-term plan for this community to stay in it, and my interests are not for the next 5 minutes. They are hopefully for the next 5 generations. So I would hope that they would look at that and not get sucked into the buzzword of this and the buzzword of that and what you see on a political mailer. The job's a lot more complicated than that, and I think a sophisticated audience like that is well aware of that, but perhaps not everyone is. But I would ask you to look at the record and make your assessment that way.
All right, thanks. Shannon?
Yeah, I think there is a difference. I've never voted to raise the property millage rate. I've never voted to raise business fees, and I've been a fiscal hawk the entire time I've been on the city commission. I'm the only one that'll hold people accountable at the table. We've had issues that have come through, and I've called it out at the table, and I'm proud to be the one on the 4-to-1 side of many votes. So yeah, that voting record does matter, and I would take a good long look at it. I'd also take a look at when the city commission decided to discuss stand your ground. I was the only commissioner to stand there and completely articulate why stand your ground is a good law for the state of Florida, and I was able to articulate that very well. I think that the voting records do matter. I think there is a difference. And I also think a difference is how many people have actually reached out to neighborhoods and got the neighborhoods and the business community to actually work together rather than competing against each other for stance on where they were trying to get at.
All right, thanks. We'll give everybody 1 minute to close. We'll start at the far end of the table. I'll keep an eye on the time. Pete, you got up to 1 minute.
The United States of America is a free country. The freedom of the United States should extend to Florida and Sarasota County, should. However, mixing business and charity with government erodes our freedom. What used to be voluntary becomes compulsory and leads to disaster. I don't know any taxpayer who wants to fund the various cleanups caused by businesses, or who wants to bail them out when they blow their own bankroll and need more to fund their lavish lifestyles. Yet that is what the county has been asked to do and will be asked again. I especially don't know anyone who wants to underwrite a mess up that is projected to happen and can be avoided just by saying no. That is the solution. Say no. No to subsidies. No to bailouts. No to incentives. No to impact discounts. If a business plan requires tax money to be
All right,
profitable,
that's a minute.
it is not a business plan at all. It is welfare.
All right, thanks. Shannon, 1 minute, please.
I'm Shannon Snyder. I was raised in Sarasota County. I've served as your city commissioner. I've served as your mayor. I was voted best mayor by SRQ magazine in the recent edition of Best. I also am proud of my service on the city commission. I did 25 years in law enforcement. I know every inch of this county and have served in every neighborhood as far as from Northport all the way to University Parkway. Sarasota County is in the middle of flux right now. If you want status quo, I'm not your candidate, but I would like to ask for your vote. If you would like to see the change that Sarasota County needs in a direction to have controlled, managed growth that's not going to saddle the taxpayer with infrastructure costs, I'd like to hear from you. If you leave here today without my cell phone number, I'll be disappointed. Also, I'd like to ask for your vote and your appreciated time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Before we get to Steve, if you want to pose a question, maybe you could start lining up at the microphones to save a little time, please. Steve, 1 minute, please.
My name is Steve McAllister. I'm a Sarasota native. I was born in the city, raised in the county, out in Maca Valley Ranches. And I spent quite a few of my 20s and 30s of those years trying to get out of here. Came back in 2004, and I've never been more content to live in a place. And I want to be more active in what's going on here. In the last few years, I have done quite a few lifestyle experiments. One of them was living a year without the use of money, and opened me up to a new understanding of resource-based economics and how we can create a good living, an economics of well-being, without being subservient to things that aren't necessarily working very well for us. We see on the national scale and on the global scale how the economic system is really breaking down. It's not working as well as we think that it does, and it's creating insurmountable amounts of debt and a lot of problems. And I think that if we can see outside of that box and recognize who we really are as a people, what is important to us in meeting our needs and allowing for people to reach their highest good, I think we have great capabilities. But we can't do that by continuing to do the same thing as always. And I hope that you consider thinking outside the box. You could check out any writing I do every day at writeinstevemcallister.com.
All right, thanks. Alex, a minute, please.
I've lived in Sarasota for 20 years. I raised my family here. I want to be an old woman in Sarasota. I want to live in a condo downtown. I want to hang out with all of you and have a wonderful life here in Sarasota. Government is supposed to be a reflection of the values of the people. I don't think Sarasota government is that right now. Government should also serve the needs of the people, and I don't think the people feel like their needs are being served. I think as an anthropologist, what I bring to the County Commission is I bring a people-centered focus, and I also bring a code of ethics that I do all of my work by, which I think a good infusion of ethics is good for government. So that's what I think I bring. I think I bring a unique perspective and an understanding of development, because there is such a thing as development without growth. And I think that is a perspective that we really need to explore and is another one of those topics that we're not talking about.
Thank you. Paul, 1 minute.
You know, like I said, we can go on the buzzwords that we see in the newspaper or in the forum, and we can take facts and push them to make them look whatever you want. I would ask you to go to my webpage, paulcaragiulo2014.com. I have a tremendous amount of support for a reason, I believe, is because the folks who are on those pages who have endorsed me and are supporting me know the way I work. They know how serious I am about the job. I will meet with anyone. I will work with anyone. I need your vote. I need your support. Please help me to work for you by working with you. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. All right, I know many of you have heard my little shtick here, but before we get to questions, I went to church on Sunday, got my sermon. So if you could just get to the questions, that would be nice. And it will respect the ability of other people to ask a question. First time anybody's applauded for that one, thank you. And my mother was glad to see me too as well. One thing for the questioners, if you want it to go to a specific candidates, or the whole panel, just please say so at the end of your very brief pointed question. Dan.
You saw me standing here, didn't you? My question is about road funding. Let me try to be succinct. Is this on? Yes. Okay. About road funding. You touched on it, Tom, but didn't really hear a good answer. Sarasota County, with all the growth that's being opened up, is facing a severe shortage and facing gridlock on roads throughout the county. There isn't the money now in the till to resolve that gridlock. How would you fund it? Would you specifically restore full funding of road impact fees, which have been cut in half by the County Commission? Would you have a tough, complete fiscal neutrality policy for Sarasota 2050? Or would you let the developers continue to call the score here and keep the costs on developers low and the burden on the taxpayers and the motorists?
All right, who do you want?
That's my question.
Who are you directing this to?
Actually, the candidates that'll appear on the ballot. Sorry, Pete.
Well, that's not very nice.
Whose names will appear on the ballot in the general election.
We always get left
All right? So we'll go Paul.
Yeah. Again,
Paul, Alex,
this morning we dealt with this very directly at the League of Cities because today, Ways and Means, there was a press release put out that said that Congress was going to relook at funding the issue with the gas tax. You know, for years and years and years, we've been paying by the gallon as opposed to by the dollar amount, so we're generating no more gas tax, even though the price of gas is higher. I'm not suggesting you pass it off to the federal government because I'm not real sweet on the idea of relying on the federal government to do much of anything. However, I think what the point is that you got to look for opportunities and get away from to tell you what's off the table. Things that are big issues like that, you got to pretty much leave everything on the table, work through it. You're not going to please everybody. If it comes down to, do you want the developers to pay for everything or pay nothing? I mean, to even polarize the issue like that does nobody any good, all right? We have to look for a holistic way to remediate these concerns. Everyone has to give a little, everyone will get a little, but we'll get through it. But these numbers are big numbers. We can find solutions for them. There are ways to do it. If it's important enough to be done, it can be done.
All right. Alex?
I do not believe that the cost of development should fall on the taxpayers on any level. So development should pay its own way. It should pay for itself. I have a piece of property that used to be on the edge of town. Now I'm in the middle of town. I live 2 blocks from a dirt road. Why is that happening? I think we really need to start looking more at the infrastructure that we have and start to solve problems like existing dirt roads, issues with River Road. We have to look at some of these things first before we just keep growing and expanding and increasing the burden on the taxpayers. I mean, we have to figure out how to do Sarasota that we already have correctly. We have to do the Sarasota that we've already created right before we just start to create a larger Sarasota and increase some of these problems that we have.
And I bet if you get elected, that road will get paved.
If they want it, if the people want it. They might like the dirt road.
Shannon?
Yeah, as I spoke earlier, we have probably 20 years of straightening out what's going to come our way in the next couple of years as far as the amount of traffic that we're going to inherit from the planning decisions that have been made. Make no mistake, no matter how big the pots are, no matter what discussion is, there's not enough money right now to straighten out the problems that we're going to receive in the not-too-distant future, whether it's University Parkway or whether it's River Road. We are going to have to make some very tough decisions. It's not just the financing of the road. It may be the availability of, we can't do certain projects in this community, whether private or public sector, until we have the infrastructure in place. It's a much bigger conversation than just where does all the money come from, which is a very big piece of the component. But it's not just, there's going to be other questions on how much we can actually develop, because we may actually have full gridlock to the point we may not be able to get to other areas until the infrastructure is in place. And unfortunately, that will slow down growth.
All right, thank you. Shirley?
Mine is to Commissioner Snyder and Caragiolo. Commissioner Snyder, you said that serving on the city commission was like herding cats. As one of those cats, how are you going, or what will you be doing differently as a county commissioner to bring consensus among the county commissioners and with the county and the cities that you don't seem to be able to do in your seat now? And that would be for the incumbent commissioners that are running for county.
All right.
Yeah, that's a good question. When I said herding cats, we have different commissioners that all have different talents. Unfortunately, they're all going in a little bit different direction at different times, and there doesn't seem to be cohesiveness, especially on the budget issues or when it comes to taxes. Those issues I've had to learn to be a lot more articulate with, or actually go into deeper delves in the conversations. That's something I've had to learn as a city commissioner. I've realized that issues much like the Come As You Are shelter, I mentioned that a year and a half ago, and that conversation got started, and then things have developed since then. I realized that I'm going to have to be a lot more articulate to build consensus and actually try to show where in the budget and the long-term issues. I can't assume that my fellow commissioners would see my point of view because I haven't articulated it well enough, and that's something I've had to learn sitting there as a city commissioner.
All right, thanks. Paul?
I've never actually tried to herd a cat, so I wouldn't know. In fact, cats look like they'd be kind of hard to herd. I don't look at the job that way. I'm part of a team, and I'm not going to agree with I would be suspicious of anyone who agreed with me on everything. But, it is so important for the process to be collaborative and so dependent on the relationships that members have with each other, which, as we know, are difficult to establish for very obvious reasons. But you have to have the perspective to recognize that you are part of a team, and you have to be. I hate to say it. People don't like to hear the word compromise. You have to be willing to compromise sometimes. You really do. It's not about an individual. It's not engineered that way. You do what you can do. You try to do the best job you can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy?
Thanks to all of you for running. And my question has to do specifically with War Mineral Springs. The County Commission unanimously approved the JEBCO proposal, and the Northport Commission 4-1 voted against it. And there were two pieces in that proposal that were problematic. JEBCO wanted War Mineral Springs conveyed to them. It was purchased by the county through the Parks Acquisition Program. They wanted the land conveyed to be used as collateral for their financing. That's number one. And number two, they wanted a 50-year lease for War Mineral Springs. So I would like each of you to tell me, would you vote the way the current commission voted, approving that proposal? And if you wouldn't, why not?
All right, all five?
Yeah.
All right. Paul, start with you.
The whole purpose of an ITN and to negotiate is that there's a point where you begin and a point, hopefully, where you end. It's not like, this is our deal and we're walking away and we'll see you later. There are things that I liked in both proposals. The issue here is there is very clearly a schism between the two boards and what their vision is. So commenting on individual components of the contract is sort of like telling you what the weather was like yesterday. But at the end of the day, I believe this decision is better left with the more indigenous regulatory agency, which is the city of Northport, and that their vision for their citizens is more appropriate because that's the structure. Do I think the county should assist them? Yeah, where it's appropriate. But I think that we need to move on from this. It needs to get this run its cycle and its course, and it's time to move on.
All right, thanks. Alex?
Well, I think that we need to talk about some other issues with War Mineral Springs, because from what I hear from the people who live in the area, they're not happy with any of the direction that this is taking. We need to recognize that War Mineral Springs is an important natural and archaeological site. It also holds great potential to be an economic engine for Northport, which desperately needs something like that. And I think we have to be really hesitant about the type of development we do around a resource like War Mineral Springs. And if I was voting, I would say that it's important for Northport to have the majority of the control over the direction that development and anything that has to do with War Mineral Springs takes on. But the county has to be willing to have some type of supportive role, and we have to be looking at things long-term.
All right, thank you. Steve?
First, thank you for including me in your reindeer game. I appreciate that. For me, I look at War Mineral Springs as it's a natural treasure. You know, this is probably the fabled fountain of youth that Ponce de Leon was looking for as he came this way. And for me, I don't think that should be privatized. I don't think I would have gone the same route as the commission did. I think it should be one of those things that belongs to the people. They're the people who live in this land, who can care for it. Personally, I think since the county commission wants to sell it, the Northport probably can't afford the responsibility to care for it. I think it should be put into a trust by the people, where we can kind of create a foundation to care for it and be able to care for it ourselves, beyond the government's control.
All right, thank you. Shannon?
No, I wouldn't have voted for it the way it was currently presented. But then again, that deal's over and done with. But I guess the bigger issue is, if you're going to buy property with environmentally sensitive land that was dedicated by the taxpayer, they need to be held in public trust by the public, and we shouldn't be selling them or conveying them to anybody. Not only this piece of property, but all the other thousands of acres that we've bought on the environmentally sensitive land. I would hate to see that property being sold. And right now, there's really not a whole lot that could stop that process either with the environmentally sensitive land. They could be sold.
All right, Pete?
Well, I don't like the idea of selling it. However, there are plenty of other things to beat the commissioners up for. I don't think I'm going to beat them up for this. The way I would have gone.
That's a good answer, actually.
The way I would have wanted to do it, I would have wanted to treat it as a public park, and I think perhaps the main control should be with the Northport board, with some standards set by the county. You wouldn't do anything there that you wouldn't do it at any other city park and say some other municipality, but not go further than that. Leave them mostly in control. When you combine two boards together, you get an unwilling voting body, and it doesn't work beyond, say, 7 members.
Okay, thank you. Tell you what, let's do this. We can do 2 more. We'll do the 2 questions. Please make them quick. Let's do 10-second answers so we can all get out of here. Everybody can have their questions and answers. Wait.
2050 has come up two or three times already, but one aspect of it, and I think the basic aspect of it, hasn't been addressed. When we were drawing it up, and 2 of our basic questions were how rapidly should the county develop, and to what should it develop? What are your opinions on the speed of it? Originally, it was almost 50 years. Now it's being much reduced by what's before the commission now. And the other one, what do we want to make out of Sarasota County?
a large metropolis, a little Tampa, or something smaller that would not develop that far.
All right, who do you want to answer this?
Yes, and let me
No,
just,
please be
in the
respectful,
interest of
please.
time, just the three
No,
that are on the
all right, let's go. Time compression, and vision.
If you look
I'm
at things
sorry.
holistically, there are things I really like. Let's say one thing specifically that I like. I like the preservation of the wildlife corridors. I like all these things that would preserve our natural resources, perhaps promote ecotourism. Those are components that I like very much. But to lock this thing in a box and pretend like it's never going to change is not really a responsible planning principle. If you look at the new smart codes, they've been out for 10 years. They're on their 9th versions. So things need to be evaluated probably more often than not. And
All right,
so.
good, thanks. Alex?
The Sarasota 2050 was a vision of the people, and I think that that vision needs to be respected. I think what's currently happening to gut the 2050 policy is wrong. If development is not working, it's the wrong kind of development. We need to go back to the table and we need to rethink about what the development will be out there. Your specific question about the time constraints, I think that that is wrong too. We have basically asking now to open the entire county up for development as if 2050 is a deadline.
Okay, good, thank you. Steve?
We only have 725 square miles worth of land here. Once we develop that, we're done. So we have to take our time doing that. I mean, for me, there's no hurry. We've got a lot of houses in Sarasota that aren't selling right now. So we don't need to go out and really rush to develop a lot more. We need to grow smart, not quickly. And let's look at what it is that we really need. How are we going to utilize the rest of this property?
All right, great, thanks. Shannon?
It is compressing the time, and it's going to have an effect on our overall supply of available buildable lots throughout Sarasota County when you take in Northport, Warm Mineral Springs area, and Venice. Now you have to throw 2050 in. We're going to have an extreme amount of available buildable lots, and that's going to in turn have a price differential towards the lots that are already built in town.
All right, thanks. Pete?
There's one thing that came from 2050 that I think is worth the whole fight, and that's fiscal neutrality. You have an estimate for fiscal neutrality, and then you back it up with an end audit to make sure that every penny comes from the development for all of its environmental costs. By that I mean the human environment,
All right,
traffic,
thanks.
all that.
Thank you. All right, last question.
Thank you very much. My name is Wayne Rubin. I have 2 comments. One is a comment and a question. I had the wonderful pleasure to be a managing partner with Benderson Development for 13 years and work side by side with my mentor, Nathan Benderson. And I was responsible for the acquisition of University Parkway on the north side and the south side. Just to shed some light on that, they came with 2 development orders with
right.
large
I'm going to call the question here.
I'll get to the question. With benefits
Please.
and burdens. The benefits, obviously, of the development, the burdens, the improvements in infrastructure, which were done and required by Honore Road, the signalizations, et cetera, et cetera. The question is, how would you create the legislative body where the logjam was and what the breakdown was in that, in my 13 years doing that, was there was no communication between Manatee County and Sarasota County. There was a total logjam between the legislative bodies. How would you fix that?
All right, and who do you want to answer this question?
I would like Mr. Caragiulo and Mr. Schneider and anyone else who chooses to comment, but they had expressed comments on University Parkway, which is where the problem is, the
All right, go,
legislative
Paul.
process.
Wait, I'm glad you bring that up because that actually brings detail to things that get kind of washed over. To answer your question, it's very easy. Relationships are important with people. Communication is important, especially intergovernmentally. I can tell you that if you look at all the candidates, I believe I'm in the best position to establish relationships with other government organizations because of the way that I work. I'll meet with anyone, I'll work with anyone.
All right, Shannon?
Yeah, I think the interrelationships as far as having the joint between Sarasota and Manatee County, they've gotten better over the last probably 5 or 6 years. I think the consolidation of the ATMS system from the traffic management, having that done out of Manatee County is a good start. I think also the 800 system and the emergency management system that's being coordinated between Sarasota and Manatee is a good start. Those relationships weren't there 30 years ago when a lot of these road projects were put in place or these development orders were allowed. This is going to take at least 20 years to straighten out what's going on, and unfortunately that wasn't done. I plan on meeting, and we need to get the comp plans to the point that the 2 comp plans almost mirror each other because we are a region. We can't look at borders anymore that way, and we must make our comp plans more comprehensible to each other as far as an apple is an apple no matter what side of university it is.
All right, Alex, if you want to answer, you're on the ballot. Your name is on the ballot. You could finish.
I'll just be quick. I really think University Parkway is an opportunity for us to learn from our mistakes. We need to figure out how we fix what's happening there, how we make it work, and how we make it a positive intersection and everything that's there. And I would even say that we need to figure out how we fix that before we just recreate that problem all along the south corridor of the rest of the county.
All right, thank you. Thank you to the candidates. Thank you for everybody to be here. I'm sorry if I had to cut anybody off, but we will get out of here on time. Thank you and enjoy.
Very nice seeing you too.